Welcome to Courtroom Conversations, a special edition of The Deep Dive. Right here on the Classic Courtroom YouTube channel. I'm Dylan Brooks Hamilton, and I'm joined today by Susan Kelly Ashford.
Great to be here today.
We're diving deep into a case that's both fascinating and deeply disturbing. The shocking discovery at the Return to Nature funeral home in Colorado, where authorities uncovered the remains of 190 decaying bodies.
190 bodies. It's almost unimaginable. And the conditions they were found in, just horrific. Stacked, piled together, some even left on gurneys, all in various stages of decomposition. It's a stark reminder of our own mortality, but also raises serious questions about how something like this could happen.
Before we unpack the details of this specific case, for anyone new to the show, we encourage you to hit that like button and subscribe to the Classic Courtroom channel to explore more intriguing legal cases like this one. Now, think about this. The families of these individuals were led to believe their loved ones had been cremated. They received urns, held memorials, mourned, only to find out later they were given concrete. What does that do to someone, to their grieving process, to their trust in institutions?
It's a complete betrayal of trust, and the emotional fallout for these families is hard to comprehend. Not only were they robbed of the chance to properly say goodbye, but they were also left with a profound sense of unease about how the remains of their loved ones were treated. This case really brings to light the vulnerability of people when they're grieving, and the immense responsibility placed on those entrusted with the care of the deceased.
Absolutely. And what makes this case even more unsettling is the contrast between the horrific conditions at the funeral home and the lifestyle of the owners, Jon and Carie Hallford. While bodies were decomposing in their care, they were living a life of extravagance, fueled by the very people they were deceiving.
That's right. Court records show they were spending lavishly on things like laser body sculpting, luxury cars, trips to Las Vegas in Florida, and even cryptocurrency, almost $900,000. In pandemic relief funds, meant to support businesses like theirs, was also misused. It's a jarring juxtaposition that raises questions about their motivations and their capacity for empathy.
What's fascinating here is the psychological aspect. How do people reconcile such blatant disregard for human dignity with their own pursuit of pleasure and material wealth? Was it pure greed, a disturbing lack of empathy, or some sort of cognitive dissonance that allowed them to compartmentalize their actions?
This is a question that psychologists and criminologists will likely be grappling with for years to come. But it speaks to the complexities of human behavior and the dark side of human nature that we often prefer not to acknowledge.
Now, let's turn to the legal ramifications. The Hallfords were eventually arrested and faced a slew of charges.
They were initially charged with 191 counts of corpse abuse, along with theft, forgery, and money laundering. That's an incredibly weighty legal battle, and it speaks to the severity of their alleged crimes. But there's a specific element here that I think deserves more attention, the charge of corpse abuse itself. Can you shed some light on what that entails legally?
Sure. Corpse abuse is a criminal offense. That varies in its definition and severity from state to state. Generally, it involves the mistreatment or desecration of a human corpse. This could include anything from improper storage or disposal of a body to acts that show a deliberate disregard for the dignity of the deceased. In this case, the charges likely stem from the horrific conditions in which the bodies were found, the stacking, the decay, the lack of proper care, and identification.
So, the charges highlight not just the financial aspect of their alleged crimes, but also the profound disrespect shown towards the deceased and their grieving families. It's a recognition that there's a moral and ethical dimension to how we treat human remains, even after death.
That makes you wonder how this could have gone on for so long undetected. And that brings us to a crucial point: the regulatory environment surrounding funeral homes in Colorado at that time. Were there any safeguards in place?
Actually, Colorado had some of the most lax regulations in the country. When it came to funeral homes, they didn't require routine inspections, and there weren't any specific credentials needed to operate one. This lack of oversight created a breeding ground for potential abuse, which unfortunately came to light in this case.
It seems like there was a systemic failure, a gap in oversight that allowed this situation to escalate to such a horrific scale. What were the specific changes that were implemented after this case came to light?
The public outcry and the family's demand for justice forced lawmakers to finally take action. The new legislation brought Colorado in line with most other states. It included mandatory inspections, stricter requirements for funeral home operators, and more transparency around the handling of remains.
It's a positive step, but it raises a fundamental question. Do we rely solely on individual morality and good intentions? Or do we need clear regulations, even in industries that deal with something as sensitive as death?
It's about finding a balance, isn't it? We can't legislate empathy or morality, but we can create safeguards that deter unethical behavior and protect vulnerable individuals. This case underscores that even in death care, regulations are essential to uphold ethical standards and public trust.
This case is a harsh reminder that sometimes the most vulnerable among us are those who can no longer speak for themselves. It's a call to be vigilant, to ask questions, and to demand accountability from institutions and individuals entrusted with the care of the deceased. We've laid out the disturbing facts of this case, but now let's delve deeper into the implications. This isn't just about one funeral home in Colorado. It raises questions about trust, accountability, and the ethical complexities of an industry that deals with death and grieving families.
This case forces us to confront an unsettling question. How much trust do we place in institutions, especially those handling matters as sensitive as death? The Hallfords were entrusted with a profound responsibility, and they utterly violated that trust.
It's a deeply disturbing thought that while families were going through the painful process of mourning, the people they turned to for support were essentially profiting from their grief. And not just profiting, but using those funds to indulge in a lifestyle. That directly contradicts the somber services they were supposed to be providing.
This case really underscores the need for transparency and accountability within the funeral industry. Families deserve to know that their loved ones are being treated with the utmost dignity and respect, not viewed as commodities in a scheme for financial gain.
But beyond the regulations and legal repercussions, there's a deeper ethical question at play here.
You're right. Even without stringent regulations, shouldn't basic human decency and ethical business practices dictate how we treat human remains? The Hallfords' actions go beyond simply bending the rules. It was active deception, a complete disregard for the emotional well-being of the families they were serving.
Their behavior raises a crucial question about intent. Was it purely driven by financial greed? Or was there a deeper psychological disconnect at play, a lack of empathy, that enabled them to justify such actions?
It's a question that's hard to answer definitively, but it's a question worth pondering. It speaks to the dark side of human nature, the potential for even seemingly ordinary individuals to commit acts that most of us would find morally reprehensible.
This case serves as a stark reminder that we can't simply assume ethical conduct. We need systems in place, whether they're legal frameworks, industry regulations, or even just cultural norms that reinforce ethical behavior, protect the vulnerable, and uphold a sense of dignity for everyone, even in death.
So, while Colorado's legislative response to strengthen oversight is a positive step, some might argue it's a reactive measure. It's about closing the barn door after the horse is bolted.
That's true. There's always a risk of playing catch-up when it comes to legislation, especially in rapidly evolving industries. But it's important to remember that laws and regulations are not static. They're meant to adapt to new challenges and address vulnerabilities that are exposed, often in tragic circumstances like this one.
The new legislation in Colorado is a sign of progress, but it also highlights the constant need for vigilance. It's a recognition that even with stronger regulations, the human element can't be ignored. Laws can create a framework, but they can't entirely safeguard against individuals who choose to act unethically.
And that's where the concept of individual responsibility comes into play. We can't simply rely on external systems to police every aspect of our lives. We need to cultivate a culture of ethical awareness, where individuals and businesses understand the weight of their actions and make a conscious effort to do what's right, not just what's legally permissible.
This case, as difficult as it is to grapple with, offers a valuable opportunity for reflection and learning. It compels us to confront some uncomfortable truths about human nature, to critically examine the systems we rely on, and to reaffirm our commitment to ethical behavior, both individually and as a society.
It's a call to action for all of us, to be more aware, more engaged, and more proactive. In shaping a world where tragedies like this become less likely, not more, this case has been a difficult journey. But it's important to consider what we can learn from it. What are the key takeaways? And how can we use this knowledge to prevent similar situations from arising in the future?
One of the biggest lessons here is the critical role of regulation. In industries that handle such sensitive matters, Colorado's lack of oversight allowed this situation to fester. And while they've taken steps to rectify this, it serves as a stark warning for other states and industries.
You've hit on a crucial point. How do we balance the need for businesses to operate freely with the need to protect consumers and ensure ethical practices, particularly in fields like death care, where trust is paramount.
It's a delicate balance, but this case highlights why it's so essential. Robust regulations, clear guidelines, and effective enforcement mechanisms are not about stifling business, but about fostering an environment where ethical conduct is the norm. It's about safeguarding both the dignity of the deceased and the peace of mind of grieving families.
We also can't overlook the power of collective action in this case. It was the family's unwavering pursuit of justice, their refusal to let this go unchallenged, that led to meaningful change. It's a potent reminder that we are not powerless, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable institutions.
It's truly inspiring to see how these families, already grappling with immense grief, channeled their pain into a force for positive change. They demanded accountability, sparked a public outcry, and ultimately pushed for stronger safeguards to protect others from experiencing similar trauma.
This case highlights that it's not enough to simply hope for ethical conduct. We need to actively participate in shaping a world where ethical behavior is not just expected, but encouraged and rewarded. We need to be informed consumers, asking tough questions, demanding transparency, and supporting organizations that hold businesses accountable for their actions.
And that brings us back to the core question we posed earlier. In a world where trust can be so easily shattered, how do we build and maintain ethical systems that truly protect the vulnerable and uphold the dignity of all, especially in matters as delicate as death?
It's a complex question that demands a multifaceted approach. We need robust regulations, effective enforcement, and a culture of accountability that permeates every level, from individual professionals to large institutions. We need to empower individuals to speak up, to challenge questionable practices, and to demand better. And we need businesses to not just pay lip service to ethics, but to genuinely prioritize ethical conduct over profit maximization.
This case, as heartbreaking as it is, offers a glimmer of hope. It demonstrates that even in the darkest of circumstances, change is possible. The family's tireless advocacy has left a lasting impact, prompting reforms and raising awareness about the need for greater accountability in the death care industry. Their legacy, in a sense, is one of prevention, hopefully sparing others from experiencing similar pain and betrayal. It's a powerful reminder that even in the face of immense loss, the human spirit can find the strength to advocate for change, to demand justice, and to ultimately contribute to a better future. The Return to Nature funeral home case is a tragedy on many levels, but it also serves as a call to action for all of us. It's a call to be informed, engaged, and vigilant. It's a call to demand better from our institutions, from our businesses, and from ourselves. It's a call to remember that ethical conduct isn't a passive virtue, but an active choice we must make each and every day. And on that note, we want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into a truly challenging and thought-provoking case. We hope you found this exploration valuable and that it sparked some important reflections. If you did, please hit that like button and subscribe to the Classic Courtroom channel. For more courtroom conversations, we appreciate you being part of this discussion, and we encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.